What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence, the #1 show for reaching millions of people. If you want to reach out and you want to change your life, today we are going to be talking about investing. I know there are a lot of people in this game that are great at making money, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, but they need to know what to do with that money. Real estate, stocks, Bitcoin. I'm joined today by DJ UCH. UCH, how are you doing, man?
Amazing, Steve. A pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. I am super excited. We were talking before the show started. So a couple of years ago, not that long ago at all, UCH was DJing around the world, some of the biggest venues, hundreds of thousands of people, making great money, living in a 5-star hotel. But then he woke up on a couch with no money and he had to figure things out. From there, he's grown. He's going to teach us some of his secrets today. Take us back to where all this started, UCH.
Yeah, so all this started back in New York City. You know, I'm a born and raised New Yorker. And once upon a time, I happened my way into the DJ world. And I didn't even know you can make money from DJing. It was like, you know, I always loved music. However, from all my years of going out in nightlife, when I told people I was playing music at this bar in Queens, they said, oh, I'll get you a job here, there. I was working 7 nights a week in 5 different clubs a year later. So that's where that went. And as I grew as a DJ beyond just doing bars, what I started to do, when you apply yourself, what happens? You start to grow yourself. And that's exactly what happened. Started to make music, started to play internationally, and things really grew for me. And that led me to living overseas. So I lived in Ibiza, which is an island off the coast of Spain. It's part of Spain, and it's considered the clubbing capital of the world. And I was playing amazing boat parties and clubs there and living life. And then I decided, well, what's the Ibiza of the Middle East? Dubai. I'll go live in Dubai for a little while. So I was doing my winters in Dubai and summers in Ibiza. Tough life. So I was doing all of that and living in Dubai in a 5-star hotel. Didn't have to do laundry. Didn't have to cook. Like literally the lap of luxury. I hit a lot of my goals super fast. And I said, I love a challenge. So whenever I feel like I'm comfortable, I like getting uncomfortable. And some people think I'm nuts for that. I think it's definitely grown me as a human being. And I said, okay, well, I live in a 5-star hotel in the desert, playing music. Where else can I do that in the world? Las Vegas. So I decided to move to Las Vegas. Didn't know anyone really. No one in the business for sure. And the thing about moving from New York to Ibiza, Steve, it took me like a month to get regular work. Moving to Dubai, it took me a month to get regular work. In Las Vegas, they don't care about your resume at all. They don't care how good of a DJ you are. They don't care. They care about who's hand-holding you into the position. Who do you know? And I knew nobody. So it took me 8 months before I had regular work. So your listeners and viewers are definitely going to understand the idea of being put in a position of not being able to work. Whether you were furloughed through this pandemic, you lost your job, you were meant to stay home, or you've just been unemployed. That was crazy for me. And that led to me being broke on a couch in LA because I was living in Las Vegas, not getting any headway. And that was a really rough year. My car got stolen. I had a huge car crash in the middle of the desert. You name it, you know, it was just going horrible. I was praying to God, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And fast forward to me being broke on that couch in LA. I have a friend in LA and I was like, hey, you know, I want to stay in LA for a while. Vegas is too hot. I'm not really working. And I woke up one day in October of 2017. I was like, I'm too old for this. I've owned real estate before. I've owned stocks before. Like, how did this happen? Why is this happening? And whatever happened with that Bitcoin thing I heard about once upon a time. So rewind to 2015 and I saw Bitcoin on Expedia. When you went on Expedia to buy a hotel at the time or a flight, it would say Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Bitcoin. I was like, what's Bitcoin? So I started to Google it. It's $215. So if you know anything about Bitcoin, the Bitcoin price, it was $215 when I was looking. I call my Wall Street friends, say, hey, Wall Street friends, you guys are experts. What do you know about this Bitcoin thing? Now, mind you, Bitcoin was $215. They say, oh, yeah, it's fake money. Don't worry about it. Literally the worst financial advice I've ever gotten as we sit here chatting. The price of Bitcoin now is $46,000. I had plenty of money to buy back then, too. So let's fast forward now to me broke on the couch 2.5 years later. Whatever happened to that Bitcoin thing? I pick up the phone because I looked up the price. It was $5,000 Bitcoin. From $215 to $5,000. I had tons of money, $215. I bought none of it because the experts told me, oh, it's fake money, don't worry about it. $5,000 Bitcoin, I have none of it. I'm broke on the couch. So I called my Wall Street friends. Guys, this thing's $5,000. Oh yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. This is literally what they told me, which is like, I mean, what? So I said, I'm going to worry about this every day for the rest of my life. And I started buying Bitcoin then with the little that I had. It was $5,000. Obviously, you've seen Bitcoin go to $65,000 earlier this year. So that was a great decision on my part. That led me into other altcoins, which led me into the stock market because I realized, oh, like looking at these charts and stuff, they're all related, whether I'm looking at Bitcoin or stocks or precious metals, they're all related. And now I'm in this really great position of teaching people this stuff. So, I get to teach people who want to learn this stuff for themselves so you can be active. I have clients and students they have a great 401k and pension and Roth IRA. They're doing everything right. However, their neighbor told them about Bitcoin once upon a time, and they're hearing things, or they're hearing about Dogecoin. They follow Elon Musk on Twitter, or they've seen GameStop, or they're hearing about Robinhood. They know something's happening, and they work a great job. They earn a great living. However, they want to be more active. They want to be able to take more time off of work, be able to spend more time with their families, be able to have more time liberty, especially when they're following me on Instagram and I'm in Miami one day and New York the next day and golfing the next day. They're like, dude, when do you work? Because I was like, well, I earn a living off the markets, and they want to be able to do the same thing, not so they can change their life overnight. It's just so they can improve their lives right now. So I'm super thankful to do that. The pandemic has been amazing for me growing this business, even starting this business. It wasn't a thing that was even a part of the plan. And then the pandemic ended my DJing. I said, oh, no work? I did this already. It's called 2017. So that led me into starting to teach because my friends wanted to learn, and I started teaching them. They told their friends. I'm teaching people I don't even know, and I'm super happy to do that.
Awesome. I mean, there's a lot in there to unpack. I mean, the first thing is, what's the most expensive advice you've ever received? It's free advice, right? Yeah. That's what one of my mentors told me. That he was like, the most expensive advice you'll ever receive is the free advice. And I think that's where you got the first hot stock tip, right? Oh, it's fake money. Don't worry about it. One of the other things that I heard you say that I thought was really interesting is when things started going wrong, when you were in Vegas and you weren't getting work, you didn't say like, oh, woe is me, life sucks. You said, what did I do to get here? You started asking yourself questions that were introspective, and you took responsibility for being there, which I think is the first step. So how did you go about, like when you were on the couch, what was step number one? Because I think some people, like this year's it's been hard on some people and it's been great for other people, right? When you're looking to get started investing, what was like the first thing that came to mind for you? Because if you're living on somebody's couch, it's not like you have $100K in the bank. It's not like you're living in Dubai in a 5-star hotel. So what did you do? What was your mindset?
So at that point, it's a great question, Steve. So let's bring me back to where was my mind at that time. So I loved DJing. However, I wasn't getting any DJ work. I have a history working in television once upon a time before I was in music. So I thought, okay, well, I'm in Los Angeles. I'll get a job in TV. It's Hollywood, right? So I started sending my resume everywhere because I just wanted something for work. Like I was not tied to just DJing. I just wanted to earn a living doing something at that point because it had been months of no work and getting nothing. And by the way, I've worked for BET, I've worked for CBS Sports, I've worked for Fox Sports, the NFL, I've worked for the US Open, CBS, American Idol. My resume is stacked in television. Nothing, no calls, no emails. I'm sending probably 100 different, and every day, this became my job. My job was to apply for jobs. So I would sit there and nothing. Finally, I get one call. And it was like, yes, I got a call. I'm going to get work. Because once you put me in the interview, the job's mine. You know, that's at least how I've always been. That's how it's always worked out for me. And I have that confidence in myself. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let's get to this interview. So they get me on the phone and they're like, okay, sir, we reviewed your resume. What are your salary requirements? I'm like, that's a weird question because I sent that to you. Okay. Well, let's say, you know, about 60, 70 starting. They said, oh, no, sir, this job pays $10 an hour.
Nice.
And that was the moment I just started laughing on the call. And it was kind of, have you ever seen the Joker movie?
Yeah, sure.
So I was laughing like that. Like I was laughing like that because it was like, what is happening in the world? What is happening in my world? Where am I? Like, this is the Twilight Zone. What is happening? And that was the bottom for me because I got off that call and I was like, where are we here? You know, like I'm here living, you know, 10 minutes out of Hollywood. I got no money. I'm on a couch, flying for TV work, getting $10 an hour, DJ'd all around the world. I have no DJ work. I've owned stocks. I've owned real estate. I have no money in the bank. This doesn't make any sense. And all of that got me to say, okay, you know, where did I go wrong here? You know, so that right there was a gut check because it's easy to just blame and be a victim, live in a victim mindset. And, you know, I definitely was, you know, whining and complaining for a lot of the year because it was like, oh my gosh, what else is happening? You know, what's next, you know, on the agenda? When your car gets stolen in the middle of the summer, a car you just bought 3 months prior, like, you know, I got the car back, by the way. They took it for a joyride. They found marijuana in the glove. It was just like, what? By the way, I was in New York when I found out my car was stolen. It's just like, this is bad. So, so that was the rock bottom, just knowing that, you know, enough was enough. Like, you know, I mean, I've done all this work in my life. I'm a smart guy, yet here I am stuck and it doesn't make any sense. Like it's not congruent with how my life has been or who I identify myself as in the world. So, that was it for me. And it was only up from there because once you actually look in the mirror and say, okay, you messed up here, well, then you can fix it because you're the one in control. Whereas if the world is at fault and your brother did this and the Hollywood did this and everybody's doing these things to me, well, you don't have any stake in changing anything because everyone has the power. So taking that responsibility is so huge because that's when you can actually move forward.
Are you enjoying this episode? Do you want to know how you can tell better stories and use story selling in your business? Check the description down below for my free story selling course. This blueprint gives you everything you need to start using story selling in your business. All right, let's jump back to the episode. So did you go get a job? Did you just start investing? Because I think a lot of people, the people that make, if they can't invest when they make 50K, they're not going to invest when they make 100. They're not going to invest when they make 200, right? Because what I've seen is standard of living keeps going up and then, I'll get there. I'll invest when I have money. So when did you start investing and how did you get seed money together to do it?
So Parkinson's law, right? Like, you know, if you have something that's, you know, 100 ounces, you're going to fill it to 99. You know, it's just how we work. So, you know, at that point, I had a little bit of money, like a tiny bit of money. I was broke, however, I had a tiny bit of money. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad once upon a time. And one of the things that I got off of square with, because I didn't grow up in a financially educated home. My parents emigrated from Nigeria and I'm first generation born American. My mom grew up on a farm. Like they were just happy to be in the game, you know, being here in the States. So I had to educate myself because everything with them was just work hard and then retire. And there was really no education in between. It's like work hard, you get a pension and you retire, which was true for their generation to a large degree. However, have you been outside? So it's a lot different now. So, you know, for me then, it was about getting back to those principles because Rich Dad Poor Dad is where I learned, Steve, pay yourself first. Mm-hmm. Pay yourself first and you'll be good to go. Because once I started to do that, I was able to buy my first house. I was able to invest. I was able to have the money to buy Bitcoin. However, I got lost in the sauce, and I was just like, well, let me just pay myself first. I got off of my good habits, and that
Mhm.
allowed bad habits to set in, and then really cataclysmic circumstances to set in. So I got back to you know paying myself first, and with a little bit of money I had, I started to buy Bitcoin. I got back in the faith, which was huge for me. I had a car crash in the California desert, 1 a.m. in the morning. My mom on that Tuesday asked, well, then my mom on that Sunday, I was in New York for a gig. I had a gig in DC. My mom had asked over the years, I hadn't gone to church in about 14 years. And she said, regularly in 14 years, and she said, when are you going to go back to church? And she had asked me over the years, my dad had asked, I gave like a non-answer. That was on the Sunday. Flew back to Vegas on the Tuesday. I was in LA the Wednesday and the Thursday night, and driving back to Vegas, which I'd done dozens of times. It's about a 4-hour drive between Vegas and LA. 1 a.m. in the morning, coyote jumps out in front of the car. And because I'm a tree hugging animal lover, I swerved going 90 miles an hour, because the limit's 75 and it's 1 in the morning. There's nobody on the road. So when you're going 90 miles an hour and you swerve, you tend to go into the ditch. So have you ever driven into a ditch before, Steve?
I have.
Yeah, not fun. I wouldn't advise it. I wouldn't advise it. So I'm like, well, this is how I'm gonna die now. I'm driving a 90 going in this ditch at 1 in the morning. The car's gonna flip. I'm gonna die. Like, this is how I die. Yelling at the top of my lungs, spinning the wheel like NASCAR. The car turns around, back of the car hits the bottom of the ditch. I'm in shock, foot still on the gas, go back onto the road. I have 2 flat tires on my right side. I pull over to the side of the road, not a scratch on me, no cars coming, full moon. And I said, yep, I'm going to go to church on Sunday. And I started to go that Sunday. I called my friend up and I said, I need a church. She said, I'm Jewish, right? I said, yeah, I know that. And she said, okay, well, my friend Ray goes to Central, which is where I attend now. I said, Central it is. I went Sunday, cried my eyes out. Called some friends of mine who had been deep in the faith for years. They were my weird Christian friends that I thanked for being my weird Christian friends all those years because I needed that. Didn't know I needed it. And lo and behold, I started getting all this DJ work. Started getting called left and right from an agency that would give me like maybe 1 or 2 things a month. I started getting 3 or 4 things a week, literally like within the same week. And, God provided for me to a large degree in that regard. And, now that I had the habit back of paying myself first, it was like, not only did I have work finally, I also was aligned with exactly what to do with the money, planting those seeds, money, so that it could pay me more, which is what that started to transpire. And the rest is, as they say, history.
That is a very good story. And the nugget there is, pay yourself first. Faith is important. I want to talk a little bit I want to go back to paying yourself first, because I think a lot of people have heard that. They've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? They've heard it somewhere. What does that actually mean? And how much should you pay yourself first? What's a good rule of thumb? Like, what did you start with? What do you recommend people do? Because I think so many people are like, well, I want to go to a nicer restaurant. I want to buy the Louis Vuittons. I want to, they want to do stuff. They want to spend their money and enjoy it. And they've read 4-Hour Workweek, which says, well, enjoy your life now. How do you balance those two in your mind? How do you recommend that for people that you teach?
Yeah. So rule of thumb for me, it's like 30%, just straight away. So I'm basically living on 70% of what I earn. I know that, I do my tithes and offerings also. So I tithe in my church. That's giving back 10%, which for some who aren't of the faith, it's just giving back to charity. It could be St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It could be a local homeless shelter in your community. It's just about giving back, because coming from that level of abundance, first off, you're making the world a better place. That's one, first and foremost. Second off, coming from the level of abundance, from a scientific brain science way, you're telling yourself that you have more than enough, subconsciously. And when you come from that place of I have more than enough to give, well, then you just attract more than you need, more than you could ever imagine. So, and when you are paying yourself first, what do you do with that money? This is where I say you go into the stock market, you go into cryptocurrency, you put your money into something so it can get you a return. So again, I talk about the Bible. In the book of Matthew, there's a story about the three servants and the master. Master is going on a trip. He gives his servants his money, says, all right, take care of my money while I'm gone. So two of the servants, they get a return on the money. And the third servant, he's scared. So this is for your viewers and listeners who are like, oh, I'll just put my money under the mattress. I'm all about that. Okay. So he takes the money and puts it into the ground because he's scared. He doesn't know how to get a return. Master comes back and says to the first two servants, oh, you did a great job. Goes to the third servant. Third servant's like, oh, I was scared, so I just put your money in the ground. It's like, what a terrible servant you are. You could have put it in the bank and at least gotten me a return and get me interest. So the whole purpose of money is to make more of it. Now, when I say that, sometimes people are like, what? Okay, so money's nothing. It's just a value exchange. That's all it is, really. When you look at it intrinsically, if you were in the woods and you needed food and there was no people around and you had no food except for a knife and somebody walked up to you and said, here's $1 million cash, you would do nothing with it because you actually need food, right? It's not like you were, in the middle of a shopping mall where you can use that $1 million. You're in the middle of the woods. So it just goes to show that the money itself, the cash itself is really nothing, right? So it's important that you keep this money moving, right? It's called currency for a reason because you're losing on inflation every second of the day. In a regular economy, 2% is inflation. So inflation basically is, the value of things going up, quote unquote, which really it's the value of your money going down, which is what cash does. Every second of the day it loses value. It's the reason why your favorite candy bar as a kid was 50 cents and today it's $2. It's not that the candy's smaller than it was when you were a kid. It says that the value of currency goes down, fiat currency goes down over time. So it's very, very important that you take the cash that you're making, pay yourself first. And when you're paying yourself first, you're buying stocks, you're buying real estate, you're buying precious metals, you're buying cryptocurrency. That way, your money's actually growing because stocks appreciate in value. Cryptocurrency appreciates in value depending on the cryptocurrency. I teach you in my course which cryptos those actually are. Real estate appreciates in value most of the time, and precious metals the same, or at least it will retain value. Because if you're just holding on to cash, putting it under the mattress, putting it into the ground, you're losing. So paying yourself first is important in order to beat inflation. Paying yourself first is important in order to remain abundant. Paying yourself first is important just so when it hits the fan, you have plenty of money to rely on. If I didn't do that up through 2020, there are many DJs, many bartenders, many managers of beautiful restaurants. They all were down bad during this break that we've had because everything was shut down. You weren't able to congregate in these places. And they worked, making $250,000 a year in some cases. And they were like, oh no, I make $250,000 a year. However, I need to, I need 400,000.
Right.
Which often happens. So if you pay yourself first and you have $1 million in the bank, $2 million in the bank, $3 million in the bank, and don't mind the zeros because it could be 25,000, 60,000, whatever your profile is. Having that money as a backup is huge. It was why I was able to sleep very easily when the pandemic happened.
Well, so having your money work for you is definitely, it's the investor class, right? It's the real true meaning of wealth. It's not having a bunch of money in the bank. It's not having a crazy high standard of living. Like if you want the higher standard of living, one of the people that I listened to said, if you want the higher standard of living, that's fine, but you should still live on 50. Like the rule I always heard was 50% of what your income is. So if you want to live in a penthouse and you want to drive a Ferrari, then you just need to make more money, but you need to be responsible with what you have. And responsible to your story about the tenants, the three servants, you need to invest money in a way that gets you a return. Where would you, it's kind of beyond the scope of this podcast to give investment advice besides your own courses, because you said you have courses and you teach. What would be just a general rule of thumb if somebody was just looking at this and they're like, I'm nervous about investing because I don't know where to start. And every time One of my friends said this. Every time I've tried to invest, I've lost the money. I feel better just keeping it in cash. Let's start with a couple rules of thumb, and then we'll unpack that last statement.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote a book, 10 Ways for You to Win the Stock Market. And for those who, I started investing and I lost out. Chapter 1 of my book is that get a mentor. And that's very, very important. And that's not just with finances. That's with literally anything. Let me ask you a question, Steve. Do you know how to drive a car?
Of course.
Okay. Did you learn how to drive on your own? No, exactly. And most of your listeners and viewers didn't either. However, we're like, well, I'm going to teach myself how to drive the car in this super highway known as the S&P 500, along with the biggest banks in the world and the biggest traders in the world who have up and down years. I mean, just thinking about that is so crazy. You want somebody hand-holding you into the process. You've mentioned you had mentors, you have mentors, I have mentors. The smartest people in the world, they look smart because they have people behind them that they can ask questions at the 11th hour when it's hitting the fan and things aren't making sense. They're able to get on the phone, they're able to get on the email, they're able to get on Voxer and say, hey, what's happening here? And that smart person who walked so you could run, right, is there to say, hey, just look out for this, just look out for this, and just do this. I mean, there's a video on YouTube, how to fly a plane. Yes, how to fly a plane. It's a 5.5-minute video. Now, if your pilot were to get on, you're going on vacation with your family. It says, ladies and gentlemen, just welcome to all of you. I just want you to know that I learned how to fly this plane on YouTube. Isn't that funny? And I look forward to bringing you all to the destination. I don't know if we're going to get there on time because I'm kind of new at this. I learned on YouTube after all. However, we're gonna do our best. You'd freak out. You'd say, okay, was that a joke? Because if it wasn't, you're going to want to get off the plane. Why would you treat your money that way? You worked hard for it. You put a lot of time and effort into it. Why would you just throw it to the wind and just say, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. However, here goes nothing. Like, it's so crazy to me. And I understand why people might want to do it. They want to, they don't know who to trust. A lot of times there's a lot of people with acronyms after their name, or people in the financial media or social media even to talk up here. That's why I'm so happy to teach my students the way that I do, because I speak in English. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I'm from the hood. It's very important to me to get this information to you so you actually understand. And that's what I would suggest first and foremost is, I don't know where to start. Get a mentor, buy my book, listen to this podcast, surround yourself with people who actually know what they're talking about so that you are able to perform. Because if you don't, and you're just kind of winging it, that's like learning how to fly a plane on YouTube.
I think that's a very good analogy. So we'll link the book. The link is down in the show notes. It's also in the action bullets. If you want to check out the book, we got a link to that. So last question I have for you is, what do you think the minimum somebody needs to have set aside to start is? If they're listening to this and they're like, well, I don't have a lot, or, I make $100K a year. How much do I need to set aside to get started? What do you think is a good starting point?
Love this question. So I'm a big believer, whether you have $5 million or you have $5, you are ready to start in the stock market right now. You have a lot who say, well, I don't really have a lot of money to invest. Doesn't matter. And I'll explain why. There's somebody I know. He's a cool guy. He's done a lot. And, he's a relative, pretty smart guy. And once upon a time, he was sat right in front of his computer, and he was on Expedia, and he was buying a flight, and it said Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Bitcoin. And he had all this money. However, he didn't know what Bitcoin was. He asked his friends about it, and they said, oh, it's fake money. Don't worry about it. And he believed them. It was $215. He had thousands of dollars to buy all this Bitcoin. It would have been worth millions today, yet he didn't have the knowledge. So he sold himself short. He didn't believe in himself. He wasn't surrounding himself with the information. So luck equals opportunity plus preparation. By that guy is me, by the way, for tuning in late. Opportunity plus preparation equals luck. You see people get lucky because not just because they have opportunities, because they're prepared for the opportunities. I had the opportunity to buy millions of dollars in today's money worth of Bitcoin back then for thousands of dollars. Like God knows where I'd be right now had I done that. However, I didn't know what I was looking at. I knew nothing about the space. I didn't trust myself in the space because I didn't know about the space. Do yourself a favor. Actually learn this stuff. Learn now so that when you do have money, you can just rock and roll. You can get right in the game. Because again, if you get the opportunity and you're not prepared, meaning you get the opportunity to invest, however, you don't know what you're doing from a mindset perspective, you don't know what to even look at, you don't know up from down, you're not going to get lucky. If you're prepared and you're not going out for the opportunities, you're not going to get lucky. You need to have both, opportunity plus preparation. There, in my opinion, there is no standard amount, because as long as you're getting a % return and you're making your money work for you, that is the name of the game. You'll figure it out from there pretty fast. I have students who, they made a couple $100 to start out and now they're making tens of thousands of dollars. These are people who didn't know any of this stuff prior to this year, like zero. You will eventually get your sea legs. It's like when you learn how to ride a bike, like you were falling constantly, you had training wheels. Once you learned, well, then you got a mountain bike and now you're biking long distances. It just becomes part of you. And the important thing is learn how to ride the bike. Like start learning how to ride the bike now. Start doing that part so that once you do know how to ride, you can get your mountain bike. You can do whatever you want and be flying.
Awesome. UCH, thank you so much for coming on and sharing knowledge. If you guys are interested in checking him out, check out the show notes, also the action bullets underneath. Anything to say before we jump off of this podcast?
Well, I want to thank you, Steve, for having me here. And you know what? I'm super passionate about financial education. So the fact that you're doing what you're doing, in my opinion, you're doing God's work. I got the American flag right there. I'm an American coming to you live from Las Vegas. This country is not going to survive on its current trajectory if we don't get smarter and we have more people who are financially educated and financially sound, growing this 1% to a 5 or even 10%. We're just not going to survive. So I'm super thankful for yourself and for people like you putting this information out. It's why I'm passionate about educating in finances as well. So I appreciate you.
No worries. It is my pleasure. To everyone else out there, until next time, take action, change lives, and make money. We'll see you soon.